The grand hall of the celestial spire was a monument to silent power. It was a place where light did not so much shine as it was commanded to gather in respectful, ambient pools. The air itself was perfumed with the scent of crystalline blooms from a dozen conquered worlds. On a dais of iridescent stone, flanked by guards whose armor seemed carved from shadow, sat the princess of the Viridian throne. She was a vision of elegant authority, her skin possessing the faint, opalescent sheen of her people, her gown a cascade of living filaments that pulsed with soft internal light. Her eyes, large and luminous, surveyed the delegation before her with a cool, detached curiosity. The delegation was human, the first from their young, fractious world to ever stand in such a realm. They were four: two diplomats in stiff formal wear, a scientist clutching a data slate, and him. He was listed on the manifest as a cultural linguist, an adjunct advisor. He stood slightly behind the others, his plain gray tunic a stark contrast to the splendor around him. He observed everything, his gaze calm, moving from the intricate mosaics on the distant ceiling to the subtle twitch of a guard's ceremonial weapon. The lead human diplomat was speaking, his voice meticulously modulated by the translator orb floating near his throat. We come in a spirit of humble inquiry and mutual prosperity. Our world offers vibrant biological diversity and considerable mineral resources, in exchange for technological and medical insights. The princess listened, the delicate tendrils that framed her face remaining perfectly still. When she spoke, her voice was like wind chimes made of ice. Your offerings are noted. The Viridian hegemony has sampled the diversity of 1,000,000 stars. Your resources are commonplace. Your history, however, is not. It is a history of conflict, of fragmentation. You elevate chaos to a principle. This makes you unpredictable. This makes you dangerous. A ripple of displeasure, felt rather than heard, went through the court. The human diplomat stiffened. The scientist began nervously punching buttons on his slate. The cultural linguist simply watched the princess. We have evolved beyond our divisive past, the diplomat insisted, a bead of sweat tracing a path down his temple. We are a unified species now, seeking our place in a wider community. Unity? The princess's chime-like voice held a sharp note. You speak the word, yet the echoes of your old hatreds still vibrate in your communications. We have analyzed your planetary networks. The same patterns persist, merely disguised. You lack a fundamental harmony, a conceptual unity that binds a civilization to lasting peace. The lead diplomat floundered. The scientist mumbled about statistical misinterpretations. The situation was unraveling, the promise of an alliance dissolving into the sterile air. It was then the cultural linguist took a single soft step forward. He did not raise his hand. He did not clear his throat. He simply began to speak, his voice quiet, yet it carried to the far corners of the silent hall. You are correct, he said. The translator orb rendered his words into the flowing Viridian tones. The courtiers stared, their inscrutable expressions perhaps flickering with surprise at the interruption from a subordinate. The princess's luminous eyes shifted to him, a glacial focus settling upon his face. We are a species forged in contradiction, he continued, his eyes meeting hers. We contain both the capacity for boundless creation and for profound destruction. We do not have a single unifying harmony. We have a symphony. And within a symphony, there is dissonance. There is tension. There is the clash of cymbals and the sigh of strings. It is not a flaw. It is the source of our depth. He took another step, now level with the lead diplomat, who was looking at him with a mixture of horror and hope. You speak of our old hatreds. You have catalogued our words for war, for prejudice, for fear. But have you catalogued our words for the moments that follow? Have you measured the frequency of forgiveness, of reconciliation, of mercy. They are not mere words to us. They are actions fought for, earned in the wake of the chaos you despise. The princess remained still, but the living filaments of her gown seemed to pulse a fraction faster. Chaos is entropy. It is the enemy of order and civilization. Is it? The linguist asked. Or is it the raw material from which order is continually chosen? We are not a finished sculpture. We are a process. Our unity is not a given state, but a daily decision. A difficult, argued over, fragile decision. That is our strength. It is easy to be unified when you are all the same, thinking the same thoughts. It is infinitely harder and infinitely stronger to choose unity when you are not the same. He paused, seeing something in her eyes now, a crack in the glacial veneer. Not anger. Something else. He knew then what he had to do. The mission parameters, the diplomatic protocols, they faded away. He was speaking now as a human to a being who perhaps had never had to choose anything at all. You seek a forbidden concept in our transmissions, he said, his voice dropping even lower, yet somehow more penetrating. You sense its shadow in our art, in our stories, in the gaps between our recorded conflicts. You are afraid of it because you cannot categorize it. Your language has no shape for it. Your philosophers have no logic for it. The hall was utterly silent. The guards, for the first time, looked uncertain, their weapons lowering a hair's breadth. The linguist spoke the final words. Not a shout, a whisper that etched itself into the quiet. The word is grace, unearned, unmerited, given not because harmony demands it, but in spite of the fact that chaos does not. It is the choice to offer peace when war is justified. It is the choice to offer kindness when cruelty is expected. It is the dissonant note that resolves into a chord so beautiful it breaks the heart. That is what you see in us. That is what trembles in our history. Not just our capacity to violate, but our infinitely stranger capacity to heal what we have no obligation to heal. The effect was instantaneous, and profound. The princess of the Viridian throne shuddered. A full, unmistakable tremor that ran from the crown of her head down through the opalescent skin of her arms. The living light of her gown flared, then dimmed, cycling through confused spectra. Her large eyes widened, not with anger, but with a kind of devastating, epiphanic shock. One of the delicate tendrils near her temple coiled tight. A soft, collective gasp echoed from the courtiers. A crystalline goblet slipped from a hand and shattered on the flawless floor, the sound horrifically loud in the stunned silence. The guards stood frozen, their programmed responses inadequate for a princess who trembled. The lead human diplomat held his breath. The scientist's data slate clattered to the floor. The linguist stood his ground, having spoken the unspeakable, having named the unnamed. He had not uttered a curse or a weaponized phrase. He had offered a concept, and it had proven more disruptive than any blasphemy. The princess slowly rose from her throne. The movement was not one of wrath, but of profound unbalance. She looked at the linguist, and then through him, as if seeing the chaotic, beautiful, terrible symphony he had described raging behind his eyes. You! Her voice was a broken chime, the translator struggling to convey the fracture in it. You build your unity on this? We build it with this, he corrected gently. The tension is the foundation. The forgiveness is the mortar. It is never finished. It is always being built. That is why we are here. Not because we are perfect, but because we are practiced at building bridges over our own abysses. The princess looked at her own court, at the perfect, static order of the celestial spire, a order that had known no internal dissonance for millennia, an order that had expanded through cold, logical supremacy. She saw a harmony so complete it had become a silence. And in the human's words, she had heard a music she did not know existed. terrifying and vibrant and alive. She did not give an answer that day. The audience was concluded, the humans escorted back to their quarters, not as prisoners, but as enigmas too potent to process. Later, in the deep watches of the palace night, the princess stood on her observation terrace, looking at the cold, ordered stars. She repeated the word, the forbidden, shapeless concept, feeling it alien and awkward in her mouth, yet burning in her mind. Grace. It was a chaos more profound than any war. It was a law that broke all laws. And as she trembled again, alone in the starlight, she felt the first crack in the perfect, silent edifice of her world, and the terrifying, thrilling whisper of something new growing in its place. The human had not brought a weapon or a threat. He had brought a seed, and the palace, for all its shocked splendor, could not stop it from taking root.